The first night Emma moved into the old house on Alder Street, she heard the walls breathing. Not literally, not in a way she could record or replay or prove to anyone, but in the quietest hours before dawn, when the world was still and her mind hovered between sleep and awareness, she felt it, the slow expansion of air, the subtle contraction, like lungs trying to remember how to mimic life. She told herself it was the old pipes, the heating system, the age of the place. But deep down, something in her recognized it instantly. The house was not empty. It wasn't malevolent, but it was awake. She had moved in alone after months of searching for something affordable near her job. At first glance, the house looked perfect. Old, creaky, slightly crooked on one side, but charming. But the landlord barely talked, handing her the keys with a strange, hurried smile. "People don't stay long," he muttered before leaving. Only later she realized he hadn't said it as a warning. It sounded like relief. The first few days passed quietly. She unpacked boxes, cleaned the dusty windowsills, aired out the stale rooms, and tried to ignore the faint sensation of being observed from doorways she wasn't facing. Occasionally, she thought she saw a movement in the periphery of her vision, a subtle shifting of shadows, a flicker against a darkened hallway. But every time she turned her head, everything stood still. The house didn't feel hostile. It felt lonely. She tried to settle in quickly, labeling drawers, stacking books, creating routine. But routine was difficult in a place where silence didn't behave like silence. At night, she heard faint tapping sounds from inside the walls. Not rodents, not pipes, not wind. This tapping had rhythm, sometimes slow and spaced like hesitant knocks. Other times clustered together, like someone drumming fingertips on wood. It came from behind the walls, beneath the floorboards, inside the ceiling, as if the house was trying to speak. One evening, after a long day at work, she set her keys on the entryway table. The metal clinked softly, and from somewhere deep within the house, directly beneath her feet, something tapped twice in response. Two identical beats, soft, delicate, like answering back. Emma froze. She hadn't moved. She hadn't made any sound besides the keys. And yet, something under the floor had acknowledged her. She forced herself to laugh it off. Old houses echo, she told herself. But old houses didn't echo in patterns. That night she fell asleep on the couch, too exhausted to climb upstairs. Sometime after midnight, a soft scraping sound brought her halfway out of sleep. Not loud, just steady enough to be intentional. At first it sounded like fabric dragging lightly along the floor, then like something moving across what on the other side of the room. She opened her eyes to darkness. Nothing moved, but something felt wrong. Not dangerous, wrong. The air was too still, the room too quiet. She had lived alone long enough to know the difference between peaceful silence and watching silence. This was the latter. She adjusted the blanket around her and forced herself to lie still. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness slowly, outlines forming. The bookshelf, the coffee table, the faint glow from the street lamp outside. But one thing stood out, the rocking chair in the corner. It wasn't rocking. It wasn't moving. But she felt as if it had moved recently, as if it had just stopped, as if someone had been sitting in it seconds earlier, watching her sleep. She squeezed her eyes shut again. In the morning, she found the chair turned slightly toward the couch. She frowned. She didn't remember leaving it that way, but exhaustion could explain many things. She straightened it, brushed it off, and went about her day. She tried to focus on normal things: grocery shopping, laundry, work emails. But each time she re-entered the house, she felt the subtle weight of something shifting to meet her, a softness in the air, a faint pressure at her back, not enough to terrify, just enough to remind her she wasn't alone. On the fifth day, it escalated. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she caught a reflection in the microwave door. Only it didn't look like her reflection. It was her, but slightly off, her posture straighter, her eyes not matching her gaze, as if the reflection lagged a fraction of a moment behind her actual movement. She blinked. The reflection snapped back into sync instantly. She turned away, heart pounding. Later that night, she decided to test the tapping. She stood in the hallway where she first heard the answering knocks and gently tapped on the wall with her knuckle. 3 soft taps. She waited. For a moment, nothing. Then, tap, tap, tap. Her throat closed. She took a step back, pulse quickening. The response sounded farther away this time, almost shy, as if the house didn't want to frighten her. Only communicate. Stop imagining things, she whispered, though the tremble in her voice betrayed her. She walked to her bedroom early, locking the door, a useless habit, considering whatever was in the house clearly didn't need doors to move around. She lay in bed with the lamp on, refusing to face the corners where the shadows thickened unnaturally. Around 2 a.m., she woke abruptly, unsure why. She hadn't heard a noise. She hadn't had a nightmare. But something pressed at the edge of her awareness, a feeling that the room had shifted. She sat up slowly. The air felt charged, as if electricity hummed just out of hearing range. Her eyes drifted to the wardrobe. It was open, just a crack. She never left it open. The crack widened, her breath still completely. She hadn't moved. She hadn't blinked. And yet the wardrobe door gently, silently, continued to open, inch by inch, revealing a darkness inside that felt too deep for such a small space. Then, something knocked back, not from inside the walls, not under the floor, not above the ceiling, from inside the wardrobe. 3 slow, deliberate taps, matching the very pattern she had used earlier that day. Something remembered, something learned, something responded. Emma pressed herself against the headboard, covering her mouth with both hands as tears pricked at her eyes. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but her body refused to obey. The wardrobe door stopped moving. The house exhaled, a long, low groan to the floorboards, almost sympathetic, as if whispering, "I heard you, and now you hear me." The darkness inside the wardrobe deepened, becoming thick, almost textured. For a moment, she thought she saw something shift within it. The faint outline of a shape too tall, too still, too patient. She didn't sleep until dawn. When sunlight finally filtered through the curtains, the wardrobe was closed, perfectly shut, as if nothing had happened. But she knew better. The house was awake. The house was listening. And most terrifying of all, the house was learning. Emma woke the next morning with the unsettling feeling that her body had been tense the entire night. Her shoulders ached. Her jaw felt tight, and her hands were stiff from holding the blanket too hard. She blinked heavily, trying to reorient herself. The room looked normal in the soft morning light, almost too normal, as if the house had dressed itself in disguise, hoping she wouldn't look too closely. She walked toward the wardrobe cautiously. Nothing moved. No darkness spilled from inside. No sound echoed back at her. She reached for the door handle and hesitated. It felt wrong to touch it, as if doing so would acknowledge what happened last night. But pretending ignorance felt worse, like letting something lurk openly in silence. She exhaled and pulled the door open. Clothes, hangers, shoes, boxes, everything she expected. But something was off, a faint scent she couldn't place. A scent that didn't belong to her, cold, metallic, and strangely old, like damp stone or forgotten places. She stepped back quickly and shut the wardrobe. The scent lingered behind her eyes. She tried to shake it off and get ready for the day, but as she brushed her teeth, the mirror seemed slightly foggy again, even though the bathroom was cold and the shower hadn't been used. She wiped the glass with her sleeve and froze. For a split second, her reflection wasn't wiping the glass at the same time she was. Just a fraction of a delay, barely noticeable, but real. She dropped her arm, stared hard at the mirror, but the reflection stared back normally, perfectly synchronized, perfectly mundane. She forced herself to leave the bathroom. Downstairs, the atmosphere felt heavy, as if the house had spent the night thinking about her and hadn't yet decided how to present itself. The rocking chair was angled toward the couch again. She swallowed hard. She hadn't touched it since yesterday. Before she could move it, a soft vibration hummed beneath her feet. Not from her phone, not from appliances. It came from the floorboards themselves, like a faint tremor, as if something beneath the house shifted, reacting to her presence. She backed away, heart pounding, but the vibration faded. She told herself she needed air, real air. Even if stepping outside made her feel like she was abandoning the house, like turning her back on something that was watching her. When she stepped outside, the world was bright and normal again. People passed by, lawn mowers hummed, dogs barked, cars rolled slowly down the street. Everything was ordinary, comforting, human. But when she returned, she froze at the front door. The rocking chair was visible through the living room window, and it was moving, just a little, a gentle, rhythmic creak. Forward, back, as if someone invisible sat there, thoughtfully waiting for her return. She entered slowly, refusing to break eye contact with the chair. The moment she stepped onto the hardwood floor, the rocking stopped. Completely, the chair stilled in mid-motion, frozen. She didn't go near it again. Not that day. By nightfall, the tapping returned. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open when a soft tap, tap, tap came from behind the pantry door. Her whole body stiffened. She waited, breath held. Tap, 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 matching her pulse, matching her fear. She closed the laptop, unable to focus. She didn't want to respond. Not again. But the house didn't seem to care about her reluctance. Tap, 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 faint, gentle, patient. She pressed her hands to her temples. Stop, she whispered, though she didn't dare speak louder. It wasn't anger in her tone, but pleading. And then something answered. Not a tap, a soft brush along the back of her chair, like fingers dragging across the wood. She jumped to her feet and stumbled backward. The kitchen felt too small, too warm, too suffocating. Her breathing turned shallow as she backed into the living room. The rocking chair sat perfectly still, but the house did not. Something shifted inside the walls, traveling upward like footsteps climbing silently through the structure of the home. Not on the stairs, inside them, within the frame. A quiet thump echoed from the ceiling, sending cold fear flooding her veins. She ran to the couch and curled up, pulling her knees to her chest. Her eyes darted around the room, tracking every shadow. The air thickened with a charged, humming tension, as if the house were holding something just out of sight. A breath, a thought, a presence, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. She stayed awake until sunrise. Every time she felt herself drifting off, a faint rustling came from somewhere in the house, behind the walls, beneath the couch, inside the ceiling. The house shifted in response to her shifting. It stayed awake because she stayed awake. By morning, she felt hollow. But the house felt alive. The third night was a turning point. She lay in bed, exhausted beyond reason, her limbs heavy, her mind foggy. The wardrobe door remained firmly shut. She had taped it closed just an hour earlier. But tape would never stop something that didn't care about doors. Sometime around 3 a.m., the air thickened again, the familiar warning. She opened her eyes before hearing anything, instinct waking her. The room was still in a way that never meant safety. She turned her head slightly toward the foot of the bed. That was when she saw it, a shadow on the wall, too tall, too narrow, too still. It stretched all the way from the floor to the ceiling, its edges outlined only by the faint glow from the street lamp outside. It didn't move. It didn't sway. It didn't flicker like normal shadows. It simply stood there, watching. Her breath faltered. She didn't blink. Neither did the shadow. Minutes passed in suffocating silence. Then the shadow elongated impossibly, sliding upward toward the ceiling as if pulled by invisible strings. It vanished into the upper corner of the room, dissolving slowly, like smoke dispersing into the plaster. Emma couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She lay awake until morning again, her mind replaying the impossible movement of that shadow, its unnatural stillness, its precise attention on her. The house wasn't just answering back anymore. It was revealing itself, piece by piece. And whatever lived here before her still lived here, still watching, still learning her. And it wasn't done. Emma barely recognized herself by the time the third morning arrived. Her movements were slow, unfocused. Her hands trembled constantly. She felt the exhaustion not just in her body, but in her bones, as though every night took pieces of her strength and left them scattered somewhere inside the house. She stumbled downstairs, clinging to the railing. The air had changed again, warmer now, almost gentle, as if the house knew she had seen too much and was trying to soothe her into staying. She hated that it almost worked. Something about the warmth felt familiar, comforting, like someone placing a blanket over her shoulders, like someone trying to calm her trembling. She walked into the kitchen cautiously. The sunlight filtered through the windows, golden and soft, yet somehow dimmer than it should be, dimmed intentionally. That was when she noticed the mug on the counter. Her mug, the one she always kept in the cabinet. It was clean, placed neatly, angled toward her, waiting. Her heart tightened. She hadn't put it there. She approached slowly, half expecting it to slide across the counter on its own. It didn't move. It simply sat there, clean, dry, warm. She touched it gingerly. The ceramic was heated slightly, as if fingers had held it moments before she entered the room. She dropped the mug immediately, stumbling backward. The house responded. A faint shiver ran through floorboards, not violent, not threatening, more like a sigh, a soft, disappointed exhale, like a living thing reacting to rejection. Emma pressed a hand to her mouth. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop." But something deeper than sound stirred behind the pantry wall. Not tapping, not scraping, breathing, slow, measured, mirroring her own rhythm. She stepped away too quickly, and the breathing stopped instantly, as if startled by her sudden retreat. It wasn't hunting her. It was following her cues, learning, adapting, responding. The realization chilled her. By afternoon, she decided she couldn't stay inside any longer. She forced herself to leave the house, walking the neighborhood aimlessly. But even outside, something felt off. Every time she glanced back at her home, she felt a subtle pressure in her chest. Not dread, a pull, a silent call urging her to return. She refused. She sat on a bench across the street, watching the house from a distance. It looked so normal in sunlight that for a moment, she doubted her own mind. The curtains moved slightly with the breeze. The paint on the siding was chipped. The windows reflected the sky like any other house. But then, one of the bedroom curtains shifted, slowly, deliberately, as if a hand she couldn't see was pulling it aside. Emma's lungs froze. A shape stood in the window, a tall, narrow silhouette, elongated unnaturally, its outline blurred around the edges. Watching her, she blinked, hard, and the shape dissolved into the shadows of the room. Emma stood abruptly, heart pounding so violently it hurt. She nearly ran to the nearest corner store just to get away from the house's view, but she forced her legs forward slowly, refusing to let panic control her. When she returned hours later, the house looked innocent again, empty, but the moment she crossed the threshold, she felt it, that shift in air pressure, that awareness settling around her like a second skin. The house knew she'd seen it watching, and it didn't try to hide anymore. As night fell, the air inside thickened again, the familiar warning that something was coming. Emma sat on the couch with every light on, clutching her phone. Though she knew calling anyone wouldn't help. What would she even say? My house answers when I knock. My reflection moves late. Something stands in my room and doesn't blink. Who would believe her? A soft thump echoed from upstairs. Not footsteps. Something heavier, like weight shifting from one plane of existence to another. Emma stood slowly, the instinctual fear in her stomach twisting tighter. She looked up the staircase, expecting to see the shadow again, but instead, she heard something new. Cold wind slipping through the walls, light tapping inside the ceiling. And then, a faint whisper, not words, not a voice, just an impression of sound, like someone exhaling syllables into her thoughts. Her knees weakened. "I can't do this," she whispered, backing toward the door. But the whisper followed, softer now, pleading, as though it were begging her not to leave. She froze. The whisper grew faintly warmer, grief-stricken, lonely, not malicious. She swallowed hard and took another step toward the door. Every light in the house flickered at once. Once, twice, then the hallway went dark. All of it, total blackout. Emma gasped and stepped back instinctively, and the house reacted instantly. The lights upstairs came on, flooding the landing with pale, cold brightness, guiding her, summoning her. No, directing her. Emma stared at the top of the stairs, trembling. The lights flickered again, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. She shook her head. No, I'm not going up there. The rocking chair answered. A slow, creaking sound came from behind her, the chair moving on its own, not rocking, just turning toward the staircase, as if pointing. Emma bit her lip hard, fighting tears. Something pressed against her back. Not a touch, just pressure in the air, urging her forward. The house wasn't trying to scare her. It was trying to show her something. Something upstairs. Something it had been trying to communicate since the first night. Emma forced herself onto the first step, then the second, then the third. The lights overhead brightened with each step, guiding her through the growing silence as she climbed. Halfway up, she paused. Something moved at the end of the hallway. Not a shadow, a figure. Tall, slender, tilted slightly, as though it didn't fully understand gravity. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She gripped the railing so tightly her fingers hurt. The figure stood motionless, its presence thick in the air, observing her. Then it nodded, just once. A slow, unnatural tilt of its elongated form, acknowledging her, inviting her. Emma felt something shift in her mind, not a scream, not panic, but a chilling clarity. Whatever lived here wasn't haunting the house. It was the house. And it wanted her to understand something, to see something, to follow it. The figure stepped back into the dim hallway, and Emma, shaking uncontrollably, followed. Emma followed the figure down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. The air grew colder, but not the kind of cold that bit the skin. This cold seeped deeper, settling in her ribs, in her bones, in the space behind her heartbeat. The hallway lights flickered softly as she walked, guiding her like dim lanterns down a tunnel. The figure moved with strange, fluid slowness, its elongated silhouette stretching and compressing as though the house itself reshaped around it. It did walk so much as drift, limbs bending slightly wrong, spine tilting like a shadow made of smoke. It stopped in front of the last door on the right. Emma had never opened this room. She assumed it was another tiny bedroom or storage closet. Yet now, with the figure waiting, she felt a strange mixture of fear and inevitability. Her hand trembled violently as she reached the door, but something in the air steadied her wrist. Not grabbing her, not forcing her, just guiding. She pushed the door open. The room was empty. Completely. No furniture. No dust. No marks on the walls. Just a rectangular window at the far end and old wooden floors that glowed softly under the hall light. But the air was heavy here. Dense. Thick with memory. The figure stepped inside, but instead of standing in the empty space, it lowered itself toward the floor, sinking into the boards as though they had been shaped precisely for it. Emma's breath caught. On the floor, she saw something she hadn't noticed at first. Scratches. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Long, thin grooves carved into the wood. Some shallow, some deep, all leading toward the center of the room, toward the exact spot where the figure now paused. Kneeling, waiting, watching her, Emma stepped inside again, taking the smallest possible steps, her voice a trembling whisper. "What do you want to show me?" The air shifted, and then she heard it. Not a whisper, not a voice, but sound, a memory, a faint dragging, a soft knock, a single breath. The room exhaled. Emma froze as something brushed past her leg, gentle, like a stray current of warm air. Then the scratches on the floor began to shimmer faintly, as though illuminated from beneath the boards. Lines lit up one by one, forming a shape, an outline, a pattern she couldn't fully understand, until she stepped back far enough to see it. At the center of the floor, faint but unmistakable, the scratches formed a figure, the figure she'd been seeing. Tall, elongated, bent. Emma's heart dropped. This was not the shape of a person. This was how the house saw itself. An outline carved not by hands, but by time. Decades? Centuries? She couldn't guess. The figure shimmered, raising its head toward her, not pleading, not threatening, not demanding, waiting. Emma swallowed hard and knelt carefully at the edge of the carved shape. "I don't understand," she whispered. The floorboards answered her. A low vibration ran through the room. Slow, steady, purposeful. And then, from somewhere deep inside the walls, the tapping started again. Not random. Patterns. She recognized them. They were the same rhythm she had tapped on the wall days before. The same phrases. The same sequence. It was repeating her messages back to her. Not mimicking. Communicating. Learning her language. Emma felt tears burn behind her eyes. Somehow, impossibly, the presence here wasn't trying to haunt her. It wasn't lost. It wasn't malicious. It was alone. Alone for so long that the walls had worn its shape. The floor had carved its outline. The rooms had memorized its movement. The house had become its body. And when she moved in, it finally had someone to talk to. Emma whispered, voice cracking, "I hear you. I hear you now." The lights flickered softly, not in warning but in relief. The silhouette lowered itself until it fused entirely with the floor, dissolving slowly into the carved lines. The scratches lost their glow one by one until they vanished completely, leaving the floor smooth and clean. The air warmed. The silence softened. The house exhaled. Emma felt the weight lift from her chest, replaced by a strange calm she hadn't felt since she moved in. The figure, whatever it was, wasn't gone. Not exactly. But it had settled, rested, resolved something ancient and aching. As she stood slowly, the light stabilized. The rocking chair downstairs stopped creaking. The walls stopped shifting. The tapping ceased. The house grew still. The presence, finally understood, faded back into the wood, into the structure, into the quiet. Emma walked back down the hallway, her steps steady. The floor no longer vibrated beneath her feet. The walls no longer breathed with hesitation or longing. The house felt normal. For the first time, when she reached the staircase, she glanced back once more. The figure was gone. The hallway was empty. But as she descended the stairs, one of the lights flickered softly. Not a warning, not fear, a farewell. She smiled faintly, tired, shaken, changed, and whispered into the quiet, "Good night." The house answered. A single, gentle tap from somewhere deep within the walls. And then, silence. Real silence. The kind she hadn't felt since the day she moved in. The kind that finally let her sleep.